I think a lot about that myself too. Like, I get stuck in my own head. I'm as guilty of it as the next person. And I think, why on earth would anybody really want to know anything about me? It's sort of like an existential crisis, which I have pretty much hourly. Anyway, it's not just you. I'm gonna take a little bit of a counter approach because I see people doing videos like this all the time, and they do really well. And the reason is, if there's a lesson and there is some storytelling and there is a little bit of advice or edutainment, infotainment, if you will, that can go along with it, people like following a story if it's interesting. And if you're a coach or a consultant and you know that people are going to be working with you one-on-one, they are interested in your story. They want you to share it with them.
You want to come along for the ride and see all of the shit show I'm delivering.
So I'll do my makeup while I share this story with you. I am sure that if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur type, you have made a lot of mistakes. And if you haven't made any mistakes, oh my gosh, please share that story, because my mistakes have given me so much stress, they've put me in the hospital on occasion, more than once. And I'm not naturally an anxiety-ridden person, but I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to running a business, and I can't find my makeup brush. So, ever had a client that you thought was absolutely going to be an amazing win? You were so excited to work with them. Everything sounded great up front, and you had a relationship. Maybe they'd been introduced to you by somebody, or you met each other at an event and you just had a good feeling about it and no reason to mistrust. And then, slowly but surely, things take a turn. Except you don't really see it because things are so good in the beginning that you just have no reason to believe that the relationship is going totally south. Now, there are little hints, and here's where I get a little bit embarrassed, because there were signs and I clearly missed them. I was doing quite a bit of work for free, but we were in negotiations for a bigger contract, and so I kept working because I believed this person was negotiating in big faith. But then little things started happening. For example, he would say things like, "I've got so much money, I don't know what to do with it. It's coming out of my ears." Or he would say things like, "I don't want to ask you guys to work for free," and then actually ask us to work for free. Except I thought I misjudged things. Then, when it came time to actually sign the proposal, there were questions after questions after questions. And this was not a huge contract, but we probably spent a total of 20 hours between writing out the proposal, making the changes, accommodating all of the requests, hopping on calls to readjust and reconfigure. And what I realized in the scope of this journey that I took, and I'll use that really only semi-facetiously because it was a journey, mentally certainly, I realized that if somebody asks you to renegotiate on a small contract more than 2 or 3 times, there's a real good chance that they don't want to pay and they're just trying to get work for free, which is what ultimately happened with this person. When we wouldn't budge on the price, he wanted more hours, he wanted more services. We upped the price and he said flat out, "I want more hours, I just don't want to pay for them." That was a sure sign that things were not going to go the way that we wanted them to. Nevertheless, we continued to negotiate in good faith. Again, because of the history that we had together.
As it turned out, this person ended up completely ghosting us. Not even having the courtesy of saying, "I don't want this contract anymore," or "It's not a good fit," or "I can't pay that. He has so much money, it's coming out of his ears." He just stopped talking to us and left with work that had been completed for him, but not paid for.
And so out of this debacle, I learned 3 very important lessons, and recognizing them has sort of been like the moment in an otherwise pretty crappy situation. So despite the fact that I am kind of embarrassed about the mistakes that I have made during the course of trying to get this contract with the person, I figure I'm going to sit down and I'm going to share them with you because I don't really feel like I'm dumb, although I do tell you, I have been questioning it more and more. I question my intelligence and my sanity every day at this point. And so despite the fact that I made a lot of really bad mistakes, I know that other people make them as well. And so I'm going to suck up my pride and I'm going to talk about the red flags and mistakes and what I would have done differently. And then I'd love for you to share what you found helpful or any sort of shit show stories you've had in your business and what you've learned from them. And let's all vent in the comments. So I met this guy at a keynote event and great personality and worked for a large corporation or with a large corporation. And so there was some instant trust there. The corporation had brought me into keynote and do some breakout sessions during their sales kickoff. And he was actually part of them. My keynotes are really interactive, and so he actually came up on the stage and did a little commercial break, if you will, in the middle of my keynote, and he was great, and I absolutely loved his personality. He had a great mission. I thought, the mission's still great. Him, not so much. So we started working together doing content creation, and there was definitely a lot of urgency. What I mean by it, definitely founder mindset, big thinker. I thought of this thing that I want you to do and you should have done it 3 days ago. So please work on Memorial Day and definitely in the middle of the night and all this other stuff. But I trusted and I believed, so I did. And I did extra and I took over development of the copy on the website and took over additional branding and project management for all sorts of initiatives that this person had going on. And that was mistake number one. I did it in good faith, recognizing or hoping that there was going to be a bigger opportunity down the road. And that's definitely what was promised, along with a lot of introductions to huge power players with tons of money to spend. None of that ever happened. And so mistake number one was not calling out the scope creep from the very get-go and demanding that I get paid or we put a pause on the work. And if there was an issue with finances, I get that 100%. I've been there, mostly due to mistakes I've made, but I've been there and I'm more than happy to work with you on it. However, you have to be honest with me about what is going on. And bragging about how many Rolexes and Teslas you own and how you paid for your house, you have so much money coming out of your ears, you don't know what to do with it, all quotes, is probably not the smartest thing to say when you're trying to get free work from a solopreneur. So that was mistake number one, not listening to my gut and not putting a stop to it and calling it out. Mistake number two. This contract, and I've had bigger contracts that required less negotiating. We meet in the middle, we shake hands on it, it takes 15 minutes and all is good. That is the negotiation-ish with somebody who really wants to work with you and wants the initiative or the engagement or whatever it is to be a win on both sides. That is the negotiation in good faith. This was a much smaller contract that took, as I said, at least 20 hours of coming back to the table, revisions. Then there were more questions, and the questions were very, very redundant. We had covered them all before, both verbally and in writing. And there were probably maybe even 6 revisions that went into this contract. This is mistake number two. For a small contract like that, anybody who is requiring more than 3 revisions, and I really would say probably closer to 2. Based on this particular experience, I won't go beyond 2 for a small contract. This person does not have your best interest at heart and does not want this to be a win-win. This is a person who wants you to lose and them to win. This is a person who wants to get things for free. And that is what I found out, because after 20 hours of contract revisions, do you know what happened? This person said, oh, I got to think about it for another 5 days, and then just never came back to the table. Ghosted, despite calls and emails and texts. ghosted. So I revoked access to the work that this person had not yet paid for, which was substantial. Of course, I already put in the hour. That will never get back, but that's okay. That is lesson number 2. Not so many contract revisions. They're taking advantage of you. And here is the third big red flag that I did not notice, but now recognize. I was working with a business partner on this particular initiative and this particular contract or / proposal. And this person would often text us individually to see if we could meet with him via the phone or via Zoom or whatever. And I obliged because I thought it was easier for scheduling and required less finagling of schedules and all that other stuff. I did it to try and accommodate his schedule. What I realized was the actual goal was to divide and conquer. So talk to one of us about this particular thing and try and get some agreement, and then talk to the other person about this particular thing and try and get an agreement. And then we would have to come back, try and put things together, and he would once again try and divide us and talk to one about what the other offered, and it just became a disaster. And I realized, right, both of us were trying to accommodate and be kind and get things going and not leave him waiting to have a call scheduled with both of us. But the goal there was divide and conquer on his part. And so that was the third big red flag that we missed. Now, there were a couple of other kind of weird things that happened during some of the calls. For example, his partner would come by and ask for some cash, and he would like make a big show of doling out 100s, or would say, "Oh my gosh, I have a great opportunity for you. Oh my gosh, my partner's just walking by. Hey, come over here. Let's talk about this potential thing with Carrie. I just had a great idea. We want to pay her all this money. What do you think? Is that a great idea? Should we do it?" And then the partner would be like, "Well, she's not down here in our physical location, so it's, that part of it's not ideal. Oh, look, we're doing a favor by offering you this position because you really don't tick all the boxes, but we're willing to do it because we figure you need the help, or you're a working mom." I don't know what the case was. And so those things, they did rub me a little bit weird at the time, but I just took them as one-offs. Looking back at all of these different data points, I now recognize that none of these negotiations happened in good faith. And in fact, he was probably always going to ghost us once we didn't offer to give or acquiesce to his demands that we give extra hours for no extra pay. And so those are the 3 big red flags. And it's easy to second guess yourself, especially as women. And I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush. This is certainly applicable to me, though. I have a desire not to rock the boat, and I want to get the business because I want a good testimonial or a great case study, or the project itself sounds amazing, which this initially did. It sounded amazing. And so I second guess these red flags that I do recognize, but I sort of push down. And so don't second guess yourself, especially if you're in a position or have a mindset that may be similar to what I battle every day, which is still to this day, know your worth. And if somebody wants to work with you, they're going to be willing to pay for it, or you're going to come to an agreement that works for both parties, where both parties get to win. And the deal doesn't mean one party loses and one party gets a whole bunch of free shit. So anyway, life lessons, business lessons for today. And I would love to hear, hope you haven't gone through the same thing, but I know a lot of us have. Anything you want to share, anything you want to comment on, questions you want to ask, drop them in the comments. And if you have any other crazy shit you want to share, drop them down there as well. I will see you, Serenity Now, in the next video.